Hi, I'm Kyle with DIY Auto Homeschool, and today we are mobile. Got a 2007 Ford 500, and the complaint is that they were driving down the road and the wrench light came on and they lost power, lost acceleration. They got pulled into a parking lot, and that's where we're at now. So this is screaming throttle body to me, but we're gonna go very simple on this. Before I even check codes, I'm just gonna start it up and I'm gonna see if it acts like it's a throttle body. When you especially on these Fords, like the 500 and some of the other had problems, if you get like that wrench light comes on, you can pull codes and you'll get like a throttle position correlation code, because they've got usually two circuits in there that measure the throttle position, and they want to make sure that they agree, or if there's more than a 5% difference between the desired position of the throttle plate and the measured actual position of the throttle plate, then they'll set a code for that. So we're just going to see if it acts like that. If it acts like that, where it doesn't want to accelerate, sometimes they're even hard to get started, the shift points are erratic, the idle is erratic, that screams throttle body on these. And we're gonna, if that's what it is, we're gonna pull it off and we're gonna try to clean it and do the relearn on the throttle body, and we're gonna see if that works. But we'll walk through that as we get to it. So let's go take a look at what this vehicle's doing. Okay, so for a startup here, I'll show you guys what the cluster looks like as we start it. It does have a bit of a hunting idle. It sort of stumbles a little bit. This is the wrench light. This is the wrench light that she said came on. We've also got a check engine light. I haven't seen this vehicle in about 2 years, so I don't know if that's been on. I don't remember exactly. I do know that she had a stumbling issue. We put a coil in at one point, but let me show you the RPMs, and when I hit that, I get about when I hit the gas pedal like that, I'm hitting about a 100 or so RPM increase. Hardly anything. I doubt we'll be able to even drive this. Put it in reverse. It's moving, but I doubt we would do very well to take the whole vehicle back. We may just take the throttle body with us like we talked about. I bet you that's what this issue is. Okay, sorry it's kind of loud. There's some construction equipment going on. But this right here is the throttle body. It sits at the end of the intake tubing, and it goes into the actual intake. So what we're going to do is we're going to zip that off. And by zip, I mean take, because we're not using impacts, because I still don't have mine replaced yet. But we're going to take that off, and we're going to take it back, put it on the bench, and clean it up. Okay, so we're going to start by taking the air cleaner box off, these clips, and there's a band right here that is actually not even tight, so that's not going to be an issue. We'll just pull this up and pull it out of there. We don't have to unplug that because we can just fold it up out of the way. And then we're going to take this tube off the front of it. I hope that band is tight. That band's tight. So let's get something to pull that off. So for these, they are either 5/16 or 8mm. Either one will work. I am using a 5/16 at the moment, just because it's handy to carry this around. And then this will pull back and off, and you've got this hose attached to it, so it's kind of limited, but we'll just move it out of the way if I can actually do that. Oh, you got this other hose attached to it as well. So this hose comes up here to where the brake booster's at. How can we do this? We'll just pull it out right here where this little T goes in. pull that out, and then we'll move this out of the way, and that will give us access to the throttle body. The throttle body has 2 bolts up top, and then should be 2 bolts, one right here and one right here down bottom. And we're just gonna zip those off. Okay, so a word of caution when you're doing this. First, unplug this. Now this clip is actually already pushed back out, but this little red retainer clip, you want to pull it back down. They just push down. They got a little tab on the front of it. Just push down, and then you can push. Let me get over here on this side of it so I can see. It's got the little tab here. You just push down. You just push here. You can see how it's releasing it there. And then, oh, yeah, all the way. Get this hose out of the way so it'll focus. You see how it releases it right there and just pulls off, and then it's disconnected. So the other point of concern here is with this hose. This hose does not go to the throttle body, but it's heated. It's got coolant that runs through it. So don't open that up unless you have to. We'll just break these loose, make sure they're all gonna play nice and turn for us. Unlike the camera not wanting to stay still. Alright, so now they're loose. We'll just spin those 4 bolts out. Once you get this 4th bolt out, it is going to be free and clear. So have your hand on it ready to support it. All right. And there we go. One more point. This right here, this gasket, that's a throttle body gasket. It's what seals it to the intake. You're going to replace that. It does not make any sense whatsoever to go this far, open this up, go through this trouble and not replace that gasket and end up with a vacuum leak and all sorts of other issues. So you pull this off, you're replacing that. So what we're going to do, since we're not going to sit here in this parking lot around all this equipment and everything, we're going to take this back to the bench and we're going to work on cleaning it up. Okay, so here we go. Look at the inside of that. That's not very well lit inside there. But that is what we are working with. You can tell it is pretty dirty. That's not what it's supposed to look like. And right up there. Now the biggest concern in here is, let me see if I can show you. In here by the throttle plate, right where, let me get a light. In here by the throttle plate, right where it opens at, that little spot where the plate rests against the bore, that's the most important area to worry about. Because that is where you'll get the difference in desired and actual position. So what we're going to use is, you can use brake clean to some extent. That's just what I have on hand. But you want to use a throttle body cleaner. And the stuff, I mean, it's a solvent. It's pretty tough. So don't get it in your eyes or anything like that. Try not to get it on your camera if you're filming stuff too. So we're just going to start off with a little spray. Just kind of let it start soaking a little bit. Because that carbon that gets built up on there it can be pretty tough. And even though it is tough, we are not going to be using a wire brush. Got a plastic, pretty stiff, well, it's not super stiff, plastic bristle brush. You don't want to use like the steel bristles because that can damage some of the stuff in there. And what we're going to do is we're just going to scrub at this at every little angle, every little way we can, and start to clean that off. And it's going to take a while. And you're going to have to let it set, and you're going to have to let it soak, and you're going to have to let it clean. This stuff gets gunked up very badly in here. This carbon buildup from the engine running. This stuff, it's just, even when you can start to get the flat spots to come off, it's just built up and built up. But like I said, down here around the bore where that plate opens and touches, and right up at the pivot points, those are your big areas. That's where you really want to focus at. And so we're going to scrub, spray a little more. And we're going to scrub. And I know a lot of people say all this out here is just cosmetic, but if I'm going to clean this, I want it clean. And you can prop this open like this, but what you want to not do is you do not want to prop this open if it is still on the vehicle. You don't want to push it open. You don't want to do anything like that. If this is still plugged in and on the vehicle, you do not want to stick your finger down in there, because there's a couple reasons. One, even with the key off, this thing can sweep on its own. And the motor that's in here and the gear reduction behind it, this plate can cut your finger off if your finger's down in there when it decides it wants to be closed. And the other thing I've been told, and I will say I've never seen either one of these happen, but the other thing I've been told is that especially if you have the key on, if this throttle body at all thinks that this plate is stuck, is like hung up, open anything, it will do everything it can to shut this plate. It will try to drive it shut. And if this motor, I think these are like 10 amp motors, some of them, and geared down 2-3 times, that will straight up cut your finger off. And I'm sure you don't want to lose a finger. So let's carry on. Let's just scrub this a little bit. Spray, scrub. One of the other points is right here along the edge. You want to make sure you get that clean on both, oh my goodness, on both sides, all along this edge. Make sure that is perfectly clean, because obviously that is one of the key areas that you have to make sure is free of carbon. There's a bug just decided to fly in here and try to kill me. That was a big old bug. I don't know if you guys can hear it or not, but it's singing its death song of wanting to murder me. That's what it is. I know it. Okay, so it's not perfect, and I still need to clean up this area where the gasket's going to seal. But let's get that light again. If we're going to see an improvement from this, we'll see it with this clean. That's more wet than carbon down there. Actually, a little mark where it's almost been rubbing or something down there. But we're going to clean up this surface real quick, and then we'll take this back and put it on the vehicle. I know, I cheated. Okay, so I don't know. I've never been accused of being overly optimistic about much of anything, but I don't know. I have a feeling that this might not actually fix it. Now, granted, I've had some that looked very similar to that, just about as dirty, and I cleaned it up, and they ran and they drove, and they didn't have any issues that I know of. They didn't come back, and but I just know with the way it wasn't reacting, like hardly at all. Now I know that can happen whenever they set a fault. They almost don't react. I hope it helps it. I hope it fixes it, if nothing else, temporarily. But I'm probably going to tell this person, a friend of mine that called me about this, I'm probably going to tell them that they may just want to count on having to put a throttle body in it at some point in the future, just so they know, it's a distinct possibility. In fact, you can get cheaper prices for parts online usually than going to like a parts store and getting them. So I may just go ahead and look up one online and just order it and have it, so that if this issue pops up again, just run over there, throw the throttle body in, do the relearn, and it should get them on their way and everything be hunky-dory. I don't know. We'll see. But right now, I'm at the parts store, and I got to go get a throttle body gasket so we can put this back together. So, what kind of self-respecting parts store in southeast Kansas does not carry a throttle body gasket for the 3-liter on the Ford 500 and Ford freaking almost everything else? Oh, not everything else, but anyway, these throttle bodies, they went bad often enough. They should have a throttle body gasket. Or maybe they do carry them and they're just sold out right now. No, I doubt that's the case. Anyway, on to the next option. I am astounded. I am shocked. Amazed, actually. Anyway, so 3 parts stores in town. Well, I'm amazed that in this town we have 3 parts stores, to be fair. Anyway, 3 parts stores. None of them have a throttle body gasket. And none of them say, even all the way up into Wichita, their stores don't have it. One said they might be able to have it by 2 o'clock this afternoon. We'll see how that goes. But, so I am about to commit the cardinal sin. Okay, not really. Anyway, I'm about to go back here and I'm going to take this throttle body and I'm going to stick it back on and I'm going to see if it runs, if it works. That gasket may not be the perfect seal, but it is not going to stay on there. Since this is kind of a parking lot that's in an awkward place and I want to just get this vehicle out of here, I'm going to see if I can just put it on and get it started, because taking it back to work on it is not too far from here. So let's see if this is going to work or not. place your bets. Let's go find out. Where in the world is that? There it is. There. Oh, goodness. I'll save you 1 second. Getting this camera propped up under the hood is not easy when we're mobile. Let's go. Alright, and then these down here, these tabs will, if you can push this up out of the way so you can get it down in there, these tabs slide into those holders down there. I'm not even showing you, am I? Those tabs at the bottom slide in just like that. And this top latches back shut. And this goes back on, and unlike whoever had this apart last, we tighten this back down. Now, there is a relearn procedure to reset and relearn the idle and everything for this. I'm not going to do it right here. I'm just going to start it up and see what it does. If I can get it to drive, I'm going to move it. Alright, first start. Don't be surprised if this idle's erratic. I'm just kind of seeing how it's going to act. Yep, that's not good. I'm going to try one last thing real quick. Sometimes once codes are set in the memory, it is just going to act funny. So we're going to see real quick. Just going to clear these codes. Not going to do the full reset and everything. This is a poor man's code clearing method. Just leave it disconnected for a little bit. Typically you'd like place something there. When we do the reset procedure to relearn the idle, we'll insulate this from the post, put a rag over it, make sure nothing can touch, and then we'll take one of our jumper wires and we'll jump the negative post to the positive post, which at first you'd think, well, that sounds horrible. Why would you ever do that? But what you're going to do is you're going to discharge all the capacitors, everything that is carries all that memory in the computer, and you're going to force it to relearn its idle from its original, the map that it has built in there, and it'll learn from that. So what we're going to do is just going to leave this disconnected for a while, and then I'm not going to be obnoxious, and I'm going to remember to plug that back in. And then we're going to go ahead and put this back on and see what's what. See if we can make this thing start and move and drive and do all that fun stuff. Radio is going funky because the battery was disconnected. Let's go see what happens. Cross your fingers. Wrench lights on. So, as you could probably see, I know that last clip ended rather abruptly, but it did not correct the problem. Not just did it not correct the problem, it didn't change it at all. I didn't think there was any improvement whatsoever. So I think this is a case of the issue didn't originate necessarily with the throttle body being dirty. Now, basically at this point, we're going to walk through a couple verification steps to make sure that the wiring and the circuits are intact, and then we're going to put a throttle body on this. Alright, for us to be able to test this, we're going to have to understand it, and this one's a little different than some systems. But we're just going to walk through what this throttle body looks like electronically, and what we're going to look for when we get out there on the vehicle. So for those of you, because I know this is kind of following in our series of, cheaper tools without having to have all the fancy diagnostic equipment, some of you may not be at the level of knowing and understanding all of this yet, but this is super simple stuff. I'm going to walk you through it. It's only going to take a minute or two to understand it. Don't get overwhelmed and don't think that you can't understand this. This is pretty simple stuff. So let's walk through it. So the first thing you have this is your throttle body, and I guess I should probably write that. Well, it's throttle body, not tuberculosis. Anyway, the first thing, obviously, you have an electric motor that's in there, and that electric motor, through about two times gear reduction, it's what drives the throttle plate. So, but what you have to remember about this is, now these wire colors, these aren't accurate to the vehicle. These are just what I put up there in that. What you have to remember about this is not a, positive and ground system like a starter where it's designed to only run one direction. Because this has to open and close the throttle plate, these right here will switch. They're computer controlled. They'll switch between being ground and power, and usually when when the throttle blade is not moving, which is the conditions we're going to be testing these in. We're not going to be down there with the throttle blade, moving, and we're actually going to have the connector unplugged when we do this. This is going to not necessarily have, it's not going to have 12 volts and 0 volts, or 12 and ground. It's probably going to have somewhere in the order of 2 to 5 volts probably, and 2 to 5 volts. It'll be even is what it'll be. A lot of times on these systems, they will put even voltage on both of those wires, because if you have 2 volts on one wire and 2 volts on the other side of an electric motor, it's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to move anywhere. And then they'll change that voltage high-low in order to get it to move how fast it wants, how far it wants, and stop. And then to know if that system is working the way it's supposed to, they have 2 throttle position sensors. Now, a throttle position sensor is typically a 3-wire sensor, but the way they've got this wired, they're getting 2 sensors out of 4 wires. So 6 wires total. You've got your 2 control wires for the motor, the electric motor in there. And then you've got 4 wires that make up 2 different throttle position sensors. So let's look at them and I'll show you what they do. This right here represents the circuit that has both the resistors. So they call one of these reference and one of these return. It doesn't really matter. But you're going to have 5 volts come in here. It's going to travel through one resistor. And now typically the way it would work is the 5 volts would come in, travel through a resistor, and travel back out on the return or the ground side of it. And then the potentiometer of that, the arm that would move across that variable resistor in there, that would be your signal wire. But the way they've done this is instead of going to ground, they go through another resistor and then out for the signal return. So you have 2 resistors powered by the same circuit, and these arms, as they will move in relation to where the motor moves the throttle plate, and they'll give different voltages. They won't give the same voltage, but what the computer knows is the computer knows what each voltage on those wires means as far as throttle position. And what it's looking for is it's looking for the throttle position that's related to the voltage to match side to side. And from what I remember in the codes, we had a stuck open, we had a stuck closed, we had a forced idle. Because I checked the codes on this when I got it back here, and I didn't do that on camera. I just plugged the code reader in to check it. But because I knew we were going to be running towards a throttle issue, but I just wanted to verify it. So we are going to be putting a throttle body on this, but I'm going to walk you through how we're going to test this to verify. Anyway, so we know we've got this circuit that runs the resistors for both of them, which will put varying amounts of voltage on here, and the arms will just contact it wherever, and then that voltage corresponds to a throttle position. So just to keep this from getting all clustered, messed up, and there we go. We just wipe that stuff. You don't have to worry about that. That motor, we're going to look for even voltage. Doesn't matter what it is, kind of even voltage. So what we will anticipate seeing, and this is just kind of going out a limb, I don't know these systems by heart. One of these will have 5 volts and one should have 0 volts. And I'm going to tell you, I'm not making the assumption yet, but I'm not anticipating any issues, because though the codes can be a little funky in the way, there was nothing that indicated a circuit problem with the throttle position sensor, either one of them. That doesn't mean it wasn't. That stuck open or stuck closed code could be, could be that one of the sensors had an issue. But usually if you have one sensor that has an issue, it's not going to say the same as the other one, and then you'll get a correlation code, throttle position A or B or whatever. You'll get a correlation code. Dropping markers. Anyway, so I anticipate seeing one of these with 5 and one of them with 0. And then one of these out here, we may see, I don't even know, up to 5 volts on it. And the other one we may also see 0 volts. It's really hard to tell. On sensor signal wires, they have bias voltage, or they have voltage that they will feed down the line, and the computer uses it for its own diagnostic purposes. And the fortunate thing about this, just like in our Ford Explorer video, what the computer has for its diagnostic purposes, we're going to hijack it and use it for our diagnostic purposes. So let's go out under the hood and take a look. Okay, so right here we've got what we should need. The one tool that we seem to use for this job. We've got our meter that we picked up at Harbor Freight that we talked about in the other video. We are finally busting out the T-pins. We've got a couple of our test leads, jumper wires, and I did finally get that throttle body gasket. So don't be flipping out on me and going off about, you didn't put a gasket on it. I got the gasket. I wasn't going to put a new one on without a gasket. So, alright, here's what we're going to do. We're going to start off, and I'm going to unplug this. Let me make sure you can see that. Alright, we're going to unplug this. Alright, now we talked about what we anticipated seeing, and let me show you how we're going to set this up and how we're going to do this. Alright, I want to get the meter in here so that you can see what it's showing. Can you see that? Let me look. Oh my goodness, look at that. You can see it. So here are the 2 meter leads. Here are the 2 meter leads. And what we're going to do is our ground. Now, one of the reasons I have this is because on my usual meter that I like a lot, I've got clips on here, so I just clip this. But we're just going to clip onto that, make sure it's got a good connection, and we're going to take this, you may not be able to see it, to the battery, or to the negative side of the battery. So that's going to be on ground. We're going to take this, we're going to hook up to it with another wire, and just, you know, using red, and just to show you that this is working here, we'll touch this to the positive side, and we've got 12.5958 volts, fully charged battery. So we've got that unplugged. We're going to walk down the line, and I did look up what the colors were on here, but here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a T-pin. I'm going to caution you again, like every time we do this, when you go to one of these connectors and you're coming in the front to test, you are not shoving this thing down in there. You're just touching it. Let me adjust this so we can get a closer shot with both the meter and that in there. Okay, so the other thing I just went and did that you'll need to do, and I should have mentioned before, is you got to turn the key on. The system has to be on. Now, because you've got this unplugged, you are going to set all sorts of codes. Now, these 2 wires here on the end, the orange and light blue and the red and green or whatever it is, those 2 wires are the wires right here that go to the motor. So we're going to touch, and we're just lightly coming in and touching about 3.8 volts. About 3.8 volts. So we've got balanced voltage on there. That's what we want to see. That's what the computer's giving it. So next we have, if I remember correctly, these 2 middle ones of the 4, the 2 middle ones are the signal reference and return. So let's check those, see what we've got. 5 volts on that one, and yeah, we're touching 0 volts on that one. So that's what we expected to see on the signal reference and return, or not signal, but the sensor reference and return. That's what we anticipated seeing. So that means this one, this gray and white and yellow and white, is that what that is, are the signal ones. And I want to show you guys something about the voltage, if we have any voltage, and I kind of hope we do, because it's a quicker test if we have voltage. So 4.83 volts on that one. We're going to touch the other one. We have, making contact on there. Alright, that's what I was looking for. Okay, the thing about the voltage that they put on these is it's very sensitive. It's not like, it's not a regular voltage supply, because all I'm going to do, this, you see that's a steady 4.83 volts. I'm going to touch the metal with my finger. You see how just touching with my finger, because my body is laying across ground here, just touching it with my finger is throwing that voltage way off. So here's what I'm trying to explain is here, if you've got voltage on this nearly 5 volts, then you know that that signal wire is good. The concern being that this one, because you don't see much voltage, 0.01 voltage, your concern is it shorted to ground? Because you want to make sure that the signal wires are good. But when I touch this, and you see them go all crazy like that, up to 25, 0.3, all that, that tells me that this is not shorted to ground, because if this was shorted to ground, you would not have that voltage fluctuation just from me touching it. It would not be that sensitive. It would be a hard short to ground. It would show 0 volts all the time. So what we found out is we have the balanced voltage on our motor like we anticipated. The sensor ground, or sensor reference and return are exactly what we anticipated. And this, because we get that very easy voltage fluctuation with nothing more than touching the wire, that tells me that this is not shorted to ground, not shorted to power. And that voltage is coming from the computer. So we know that between here and the computer, it's got an intact wire. It'd be very sensitive to corrosion or anything. So the wiring's intact, everything's good. We're ready to put a throttle body in this and fix it. Okay, since we've been through this replacement already, I'm not gonna go through step by step because it's exactly the same as when we did it before. So we're just gonna go through here, only we're not putting the same throttle body back on, we're putting a new one. Oh, almost forgot. This is not directional, it can kind of go in either way. It's just got little ridges on there that kind of hold it in. Okay, part of the reset, and the way we're going to do this reset and calibration, is we're going to, as I mentioned before, we're going to dump all the memory of how it learned over time how to idle with that dirty old throttle body. So now we got a new throttle body. We need it to learn over time how to idle with it. So we'll pull that off. We're going to insulate it, keep it from touching the post, and then we're going to take our jumper wire. We're going to jump from this. That bolt is kind of loose. I don't want to be on that. I want to be on the solid. Where in the world? There we go. If I could ever learn how to open this, from there straight to the positive battery. Right? And because that's not on the negative post, perfectly fine. You don't want to connect the negative post to the positive post. That would be bad. And what we're going to do is, they've got fancy technical names, force capacitive discharge. Basically, the capacitors that help keep all the memory and the adaptive strategies learned. We're going to dump all the voltage out of those so it forgets all that stuff. It forgets its idle with, its idle point with this and all that. It's going to have to relearn it. It may run just a bit funky right when we start it up. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they act funny just for a few seconds. Okay, it's been just a couple minutes, and that's all you really need. They say 30 seconds really is all you need. But we'll pull this wire off. Get out of here, fly. And then just reconnect this. Oh, goodness. It's all making a bunch of noise and everything. Now, what this also did when we did that is it dumped all the codes, so we don't have to go in and clear codes. So, we're going to go into the car, and we're going to do the relearn, the calibration on this, and I'll show you how we do that. Okay, one of the things I forgot I didn't specifically show, but before you go disconnect the battery and then turn it back on, come in and turn the key off. You can kind of hear the radio, it's still going crazy again. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn the key on, and we're going to wait just a few seconds, and if the lights do funky stuff, don't even worry about that. But we're going to very slowly, on the accelerator pedal, we're going to press it down all the way to the floor, but not slam it. We're just going to very slowly walk it to the floor. Take about, 8 to 10 seconds to get it all the way down. Hold it for just a couple seconds, and then slowly let back off of it. Alright, and then we're going to shut the key off. Wait 10 seconds. And then we're going to turn the key back on. And we're going to start it up. And what we're going to do is we're going to start it up, and we're going to let it run, and we're going to let it idle for probably 10 or 15 minutes. Now, what it's going to do is it's going to have to adjust the fuel trims. It's going to have to adjust everything and how it idles. And you could plug the tool in and watch the fuel trim and other data and see when it kind of settles to its least adjusted point, or, as far as it gets, because it'll adjust over time. But it should happen within 15 minutes or so, 15, 20 minutes at most. So we're going to start this up, and we're hoping it doesn't do the same thing it did before. That'd be weird, wouldn't it? Awkward. Well, it got up a lot higher. We'll just give it a few seconds. We're not going to press the gas pedal. We're not going to do anything. We're going to let it idle, and we're going to let it warm up from cold to hot, well, warm, and we're going to let it learn its new throttle body, its new idle position, everything. We'll check back in when that's done. Yeah. Well, just a little snippet here real quick while we're letting this thing run and go through its learn, putting some air in the tires. So, like I said, it's a little bit low. It's supposed to be 32. It's 29. Anyway, like I said, you want to let it run for a few minutes, and you want it to start to learn its idle. And then after that, you're going to take it, you're going to drive it. And for those of you who work in the industry, you're not going to go drive it crazy. You just drive it normal. Normal, easy accelerations. And for any of you, actually, you don't drive your car crazy. Anyway. But when you're driving it to help it relearn its idle and its shift points, you want to drive it. If you're doing it for somebody else, just drive it normal, nice, moderate accelerations. You're not slamming on the gas. You're not a grandma driving 2 miles an hour down the highway. If it's your own vehicle, drive it how you drive it. That's what it's going to learn. That's what you want to teach it. That's how you want to learn from the get-go. But if you're doing this work for someone else like I am, just nice, easy, steady, normal driving. Nothing crazy fast, nothing crazy slow. So we got just a couple minutes left on this. I'll finish up checking the air in these tires. Good practice for those of you who work on cars. And then we'll see how this thing drives. Okay, so good news. The check engine light and wrench light, they're not on. So let's take this thing for a little bit of a spin. See how it's doing. That grinding, it's like more of a roughness. It's been really humid here, and rotors that bear metal surface tend to get surface rust, and that's what that sound is. Just it'll go away after a couple brake applications. But like I said, we don't want to gun the gas, take off like a bat out of heck. It is responding to the throttle input. It is running that, it ran that 1-2 shift up kind of high, but that's it, just trying to, oh goodness, you fell, get back. I guess I should put a seatbelt on the camera, that'd be weird, wouldn't it? Anyway, let me see if I can fix you. Okay, so I'm super dark. I don't know how to fix that, because, you know, anyway. Everything seems to be going fine. It is, like I said, it ran up a little high on the 1-2 shift. It had a harsh shift right there. I'm not too worried about that at this point because it's still trying to learn its shift points and all that stuff. But I'm going to say this one's fixed. Look at that, I'm bright now. Oh, don't fall, don't fall, don't fall. Anyway, the only thing I do here that kind of concerns me is I think I just heard a wheel bearing noise. Let me fix this. Yeah, I think I heard what maybe a wheel bearing noise, because it's kind of like that roughness from when you hit the brakes when they got surface rust on them, but it's when you're driving. Turn around in this person's driveway. I'm sure they won't mind. Oh goodness, here's like bushings or something going on in the front there. Alright, just since we've got this, we're gonna, oh goodness. Oh, we're gonna listen, see if that was a bearing noise. That sounds bearing noisy, a little bit. Oh goodness, there you go again. Let me fix that. Anyway, I don't need to fix that. We're done. So, oh, that was a clunk. Oh my goodness, there's this thing's getting a suspension check before it goes, because I am not gonna let a friend of mine drive away in something that has all this suspension noise without them at least knowing about it. So we're gonna do a suspension check, but that's another video. Anyway, so I hope this helps you guys if you have throttle body issues on your Ford 500, 05, 6, 7, whatever. Any Ford, actually. Now, the wiring diagram, or the drawn out wiring diagram that we walked through, not all of them are going to look like that. You may have to find out what yours is like. But theory and operation on how sensors work, that's pretty consistent. They won't all look like that, like a lot of the potentiometers. There'll be 3-wire sensors. But anyway, I really, really hope, because I've been looking around to see if there was much information on this already. I didn't find a lot of stuff that really walked in depth on how to do this on these specific vehicles. So if you were having this issue, I really hope it helped you. So there's a couple other videos that if you like this, you might be interested in. I'll put a link to them in their description. But thank you for your time and spending it watching me try to fix this car. And I will see you guys in the next video.